This is lesson 2 from the CKLA Domain 8, Animals and Habitats. Last lesson, we were introduced to what a habitat was, and that was just a very specific area that animals and plants can both live in. We talked about how animals and plants need specific areas for specific reasons, and we're going to get into some of those reasons today with one of the habitats that we are going to be learning about. So before we get started, we do have our objective. At the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to explain key parts of the Arctic tundra habitat and the Arctic Ocean habitat, as well as that you are going to be able to explain how plants and animals have adapted to live in these habitats. Like always, we do have some vocabulary. The first one is adapted, which means to change to suit a special purpose or situation, adjusted. And that just means a change that a plant or animal can do in order to fit a certain situation. The next one is burrow, to dig a hole or tunnel. Exposed, left unprotected, put out in the open with no covering. And tundra, a treeless area in a specific part of the Arctic. Now, we're going to be talking about the Arctic habitat, and there's actually two different kinds of Arctic habitats. It's going to be the tundra, which was in our vocabulary, and there's also going to be the Arctic Ocean. So we're going to get into both of those during this reading. Now, the Arctic is up here. It's in this area that's shaded off by the yellow, and it is very close to the pole, and it is very cold. It is different, however, from Antarctica, which is down here. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the Arctic right up here. Now, our friend Rattenborough is going to lead us through this reading again. So we are going to get started with our reading of the Arctic habitat with the Arctic tundra and the Arctic Ocean. Hello again, Rattenborough the adventurer here to take you on a tour of one of the coldest habitats on Earth, the Arctic tundra. In the tundra, there aren't very many plants. In fact, there are no trees at all, and a rat like me has to wear long johns and mittens. The wind here is incredibly strong, which makes the air feel even colder. The ground is frozen and nearly everything is covered in ice. In the winter, daylight lasts only a few hours, and at times the sun does not come out at all. Some ice will still be here in the summer, but in the summer, the top layer of ice melts so that the ground gets wet and muddy. The temperatures here are so low that most people and animals would freeze. All of these things make the Arctic tundra one of the least friendly habitats on Earth for plants and animals. Some plants and animals can only live in the Arctic tundra in the summer months, when the temperature is warmer, but some are able to live there all year long. Arctic plants grow very close together and do not grow very tall, which keeps them from being blown away by the Arctic winds. The kinds of plants that can live in the Arctic tundra are mosses and different types of grasses. For once, I am the tallest thing around. The animals that call the Arctic tundra home all year round have adapted, or changed, to the harsh conditions. When an animal has adapted to a habitat, that means it has changed over the years and now has special things that help it live in that habitat. For example, many animals in the Arctic have adapted by growing heavy fur coats that help them stay warm in the cold temperatures. This creature you see right now is called a musk ox. The musk ox's long, shaggy coat has an extra layer of hair underneath that keeps him warm when the temperature is cool enough to turn a rat into a popsicle, and it sheds its extra coat of hair in the warmer summer months. Musk oxen travel in herds so they can huddle together for added warmth. Their hooves are very wide to keep them from slipping on the snow and ice. In the winter, musk oxen use their sharp hooves to dig under the snow to find plants to eat. Here comes an animal I want to stay hidden from. This is a wolverine. The wolverine uses its fur coat to keep nice and warm. Like the musk ox, the wolverine has large paws to help him move across the snow that comes in handy when he's trying to catch food. These animals are called caribou and are part of the deer family. They are sometimes called reindeer. These caribou are traveling in huge herd, which helps to protect them against attacks from other animals. Caribou hair traps air, which helps keep these animals warm. Their hooves change depending on the time of year, so they can walk and run in mushy, wet terrain or in hard, icy terrain. Male caribou also have antlers to help them dig for grass in the snow. This Arctic fox also has a coat that changes during the winter from a brown summer coat into this very thick white fur to help the fox blend into its surroundings. The fur also covers its feet so it can walk on snow and ice. Thanks to the fox's fur, it can hide and sneak up on birds, hares, and rodents like me. The Arctic hare's white coat becomes much heavier in the winter. Its ears are smaller than those of other hares, meaning less of its body is exposed to the cold. In other words, this is no place for critters with long, dangly ears, unless they have long, dangly earmuffs to keep those ears from freezing. The hare's white coloring also helps to hide it in the snow, and its black feet are wide and large, like small snowshoes, so it can run fast in the snow. There are other kinds of habitats in the Arctic besides the tundra, and different kinds of plants and animals live in these other habitats. The Arctic Ocean is a habitat rich in sea life and animals that rely on the sea for their food. The water is so cold in the Arctic Ocean that most living creatures would be able to stay alive only a few minutes in it. Animals such as the walrus call the Arctic Ocean home. These huge creatures just love the icy water and can swim around for a long period of time. Walruses have adapted to life in the Arctic Ocean by storing blubber under their skin. Blubber prevents heat from escaping from their bodies. Walruses also have long teeth called tusks, which they use almost like arms to pull themselves up out of the water and onto the ice. Look at these cute animals. They are seals. Seals have blubber under their skin just like walruses. Some types of seals are born covered with a layer of white fur to keep them warm until they develop blubber. Seals are incredible swimmers. Like fish and walruses, seals don't have arms and legs. Instead, seals have flippers, and they swim by wiggling their bodies from side to side using their flippers to steer. They swim very fast, so they catch plenty of tasty fish. Thankfully, they don't eat rats. Here comes a polar bear, look out! Let's hide behind this rock and I'll tell you about this amazing creature. The polar bear is perhaps the best known of all the animals living in the Arctic Ocean. These astonishing animals have adapted incredibly well to the harsh Arctic habitat. Polar bears are the largest bears in the world. Male polar bears weigh up to 1,700 pounds. That's probably heavier than everyone in your class put together, including your teacher. And polar bears grow up to 10 feet from head to toe. Yikes! Polar bears are covered with a heavy coat made up of 2 layers of fur, and they have a layer of blubber under their skin. Their ears and tails are very small so that not too much of their bodies are exposed to the cold weather. It's a good thing they have all that fur and blubber and sharp claws, because polar bears spend most of their life living on sea ice, chunks of ice that float in the Arctic Ocean. Some polar bears take a dip in the Arctic water to swim from one chunk of ice to another, and they have webbed paws, sort of like a duck's feet, to help them swim. They use these mighty paws to hunt their food, seals. Like all living things, polar bears need water to survive, and they get that water from melted snow and ice. Even though adult polar bears spend most of their time living on sea ice, polar bear babies, or cubs, are born on land. Their mothers, female polar bears, burrow into the snow to make a den. They will then hide in the den while they have their babies. They stay in the den with their young all winter, and in the spring they finally come out. The cubs stay with their mother for almost 2 years, learning how to hunt and learning survival skills before leaving home. Now, speaking of home, I really must go. It's absolutely frigid here, and my whisker warmers are just not doing the job. We've learned a lot about the Arctic habitat and the animals that have managed to adapt and survive here. I think our next stop should be somewhere warmer, don't you? Remember that even habitats as extremely cold as the Arctic tundra and Arctic Ocean can be full of life. Now, It's easier for me to stay hidden on all the snow, and I can barely move with all of these clothes on, so I'm getting out of here before I'm spotted by that Arctic fox. See you next time. So at the end of that reading, I would like you to go back to Seesaw and work on the activities that go along with this reading. If you need to go back and listen to any part of this story while you are doing these activities, please feel free. Just keep this tab open.